Welcome to the Hired Not Fired podcast, brought to you by The Real Me, the soft skills first talent solution that helps employers hire entry level employees with better developed soft skills, such as communication, problem solving, or emotional intelligence. Join us as we sit down with hiring managers, talent leaders, and others and get insider tips to help Gen Z stand out and get hired. Let's dive in. Welcome to the new episode of Hired Not Fired, and I am excited to introduce this week's guest. I have Nick Smith. Nick is a recruiting talent acquisition professional with nearly a decade of experience hiring new grads, individual contributors, and executive technical talent at companies like Meta, formerly known as Facebook, Lucid Motors, Twitch, and Prime Video, where he's made immediate impact in tough to fill verticals, developed entire interview architecture for new teams, and everything in between. Welcome, Nick.
Thank you so much, Deb. I'm so excited to be here.
Well, thank you for being here because I know our listeners are going to want to hear some insight from your rich experience. You spent years inside one of the most competitive hiring environments in the world. What surprised you most about how companies like that go about recruiting for new hires?
Yeah, I think what really stands out, it really comes down to a couple different perspectives. One as a recruiting professional, and one is, I guess, an outsider. And I think as a recruiting professional, it's incredibly impressive how efficient things are. And I think it's not too dissimilar from the same reaction that I think someone from the outside looking in would feel as well. But maybe just more of a, oh wow, that really is a machine, and it really does just operate, and it's incredibly efficient. Of course, there's a lot of things that, everybody can pick apart, here and there, just like any system. But for the most part, at the scale at which I tend to operate, it is quite impressive to see the tools, the systems, the resources available.
Mhm. Well, when a recruiter opens up a resume for a role with hundreds or probably thousands of applicants, right? What are they actually scanning for in the first 30 seconds? Like, what's the first step in that
Yeah.
machine for the applicant?
Yeah, it's probably not too dissimilar from every post you see on LinkedIn. I think, with the exception of I'm not AI. But again, it's not too dissimilar from the idea that, it is keyword centric, at least for the first pass. You know, I kind of look at a resume review as a two-step process. At its core, it's the is this worth my time review, and then it's the reading of the resume. So, a lot of times it's making sure that I'm seeing what I need to see from a tooling perspective, or
What
a
do you
skill
mean by a
perspective.
tooling perspective? Sorry.
Yeah, no worries. So, it depends on the role I'm looking for.
Mhm.
So, if a role requires a certain tech stack, or it requires a certain standardized knowledge base, or something like that, right? Like, those are either acronyms or very commonly used names of tools, software systems, you name it. So, I'm looking for those. I think once I see enough to make me go, okay, this person has what I am looking for at surface level, I'm going to dive in and see, well, were they successful in doing what I
Mhm.
need them to have done? Have they been doing it as long as I need them to have done it? There's a million different things, but I think it's really a two-pass thing. Is this worth my time? And then the deep dive. And really, the first pass is keywords. Second pass is context, meet, details, performance.
Okay, great. Is there anything that doesn't matter as much as candidates think?
I think it depends on industry, but I think right now, if I'm thinking from my perspective, because I don't want to pretend I know how everybody thinks in this industry, but I care less about tenure now. It is incredibly important. So don't get me wrong. If you've got 3 years here, 5 years here, 2 years here versus the candidate with a year here, 6 months here, right? Like, that's always going to be more appealing.
Mhm.
But as somebody myself who works in talent acquisition, short stints are not uncommon anymore. And it's not uncommon for a lot of people in this industry. So I think it's important, but I don't think it's the deal breaker that it might have been 5, 10, so many years ago.
So is that good news for new grads that, all their experiences maybe an internship or a summer position?
Oh, absolutely. I think interns obviously have a lot of stuff that industry people don't have, and maybe even put too much worry into not having that rather than leaning into who they are.
Okay, that's interesting. Now, from your experience, what tends to get someone moved forward to an interview versus quietly passed over? And let's assume they passed that first pass where it was worth your time.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of times it's just logistics in nature. Like, are you one of the first resumes that I see? Right? There are a lot of roles that I have that get thousands of applicants. And you may be the most qualified person in the bunch, but if I've gone through 500 of these resumes and I've narrowed that down to a short list,
Mhm.
if you apply a week later, I may have 5 people at onsite, right? I may have moved pretty quickly. Maybe onsite in a week is a little bit aggressive, but the idea remains the same. I think that might be one thing that gets overlooked is just timing.
Mhm. Yeah. Best to be one of those first few in the bunch.
Be
Um,
strategic.
yeah. So, all right. Now, how do recruiters in these large, highly competitive companies think about potential versus polish? And I'm talking especially for those early career or non-traditional candidates.
Almost, I don't want to be so black or white or declarative, but it is almost exclusively a new grad thing. Um, we aren't typically looking for the idea that somebody can deliver in the future if they've got 10 years of experience. If that person is being hired for a senior or principal level role, or maybe a managerial role in some capacity, like you got to come in and do your job now. A new grad, there is still an expectation to do your job and do it now, but you are a new grad. We know this. When we are interviewing, potential is huge in our evaluation process. And I tell candidates, or I try to as much as possible, if I'm coaching new grads, we know who you are, meaning your profile, right? Like you don't have the 5, 10, 15 years of experience.
Right.
And so we are going based off of the experience you have, the knowledge you have. And a lot of that is evaluated through the lens of, can this person do the job? And then can they do it in this environment? And do I want to work with them? Which is more of the potential side of things.
Mhm.
So, are you responsive in the interview when needed? Are you able to adapt in the interview? If somebody gives you a new variable or a new scenario mid thought, midstream, can you adapt? Can you pivot? That is potential. That is the idea that this person can become something that maybe they aren't yet, or a more refined version of this. In new grads, in short, potential is huge.
Okay, that's good news to hear. And yes, we hear a lot that adaptability is really important. And I think I'm hearing a little bit of learnability and coachability in there as well.
100%.
Yeah. So, what are a few maybe subtle red flags that candidates might accidentally signal on paper without realizing it?
On paper. Okay. So on
Yeah.
paper, I would, it boils down to, it's kind of a simple, direct way to say it, but being lazy. If you aren't being descriptive, you are going to lose out to candidates that are. And this doesn't mean I need an essay for every single thing that you've accomplished. But if you've done something important and it's measurable, tell me, right? Like, I want to know what you accomplished, what the impact was, and maybe even how it affected other people positively. So I think an unnecessary red flag may not be something that's glaring. It just might be, an error through omission.
Okay, the absence of what they put on there. Last question for this visit, and I already know I'm going
Yeah,
to have you come back because I there's so much more I want to ask you. But for this
wonderful.
round, if a strong candidate isn't getting interviews, what's the first thing you'd have them rethink?
Two things. I would look at their resume. just, that's usually the key that unlocks the door. And then I would look at what their networking is, or has been. I can't tell you how many times, candidates find an immense relief as soon as they realize that tapping into their network is usually the best way to get the next job. And there's usually a pretty good strategy around that. It's quite simple, but it requires discipline. But those are the first two things I would do: is what does your resume look like, and what's your outreach strategy when you're applying for jobs?
Mhm. Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Nick. This was wonderful. And I'm looking forward to having you back so we can continue talking about how new grads can get noticed and get hired at some of the world leading companies.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.